Hello and welcome everyone to yet another episode of the Delhi Union Talks. I'm joined today by distinguished diplomat Shri Kanwal Sibalji, who served as the 24th Foreign Secretary of India and currently holds the position of the Chancellor of the Jawaharlal Nehru University. Renowned as one of the foremost uh, strategic analysts in India, he has served as ambassador to Russia, France, Turkey, Egypt, and is a recipient of the Padma Shri for his extensive contributions to international diplomacy. Ambassador Sibal, it's an absolute pleasure having you on this platform.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Sibal.
He's welcome. You're welcome.
Ambassador Sibal, there is a slightly largish elephant in the room. Even as we talk virtually across the world today, I'm sitting in London, I'm presuming you're sitting in Delhi. Is there an imminent threat of World War III, and how likely is it in your experience?
Well, I won't say that there is an imminent threat of World War III, but if things go on as they are, and this war in the Middle East is not controlled, then more and more countries can get sucked in. It will not be a world war of the kind that we saw last century, World War One and World War Two, where everybody is fighting everybody, more or less. Uh, but here, what will happen is that the interests of everyone will suffer deeply, uh, and therefore everybody will be affected. So indirectly, it would morph into a World War III in terms of its consequences, not in terms of an actual conflict where everybody forms coalitions and they start outside the principal protagonists, in which case, which are the US, Iran, and uh, Israel and the West Asian countries. Outside these protagonists, if everybody starts, fighting with each other, choosing sides, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen.
Certainly. That's a very interesting take, sir. But what would you think that an alignment of any sort would be in the scenario of the certain war that you spoke of? Not the traditional World War, but still, in a practical sense, everybody would be affected because India is part of BRICS and it's a foremost member of BRICS, I would say. And on the other hand, India is also part of Quad and other alliances. Yes, sir.
Well, first of all, India is not the foremost member of BRICS. We are one of the founding members. Russia, China, Brazil, and India are the core members. South Africa joined later, but South Africa doesn't have the heft of the other four countries. And then when they expanded BRICS, uh, some other countries have joined in, which have a useful role to play, like
Mm.
UAE and Saudi Arabia or Ethiopia or Egypt. But nevertheless, they don't have that kind of economic, political, and military heft. So I would say India is a key member of BRICS, but not the most important. I think that needs
Fair
clarification.
enough.
Secondly, in terms of uh, our membership of Quad, that is not relevant to what is happening currently in this conflict, because that is confined to the Indo-Pacific. And even if you include the Western Indian Ocean, the Arabian Sea, in the Indo-Pacific uh, matrix, and therefore take the view that it should be the responsibility of Quad to stabilize the situation. That's also not a practical view of the things, because it's United States which is the pillar of Quad, which actually is involved in this war and is unable to control it, or is unwilling to control it, or is responsible for the escalation. Uh, so within Quad, nobody has the weight to try and deflect the United
Mm.
States from the course that it has taken. Australia and Japan
Mm.
are also not supportive of the United States in this regard, although the United States has tried to involve Japan in
Mm.
this project to clear the Hormuz Strait, but Japan is not yielding to this pressure. So I don't think the Quad has any particular influence in stabilizing the situation. Now, the the interesting part is that in a very ironical way, Russia is gaining from this conflict in some ways.
Mm.
First of all, the oil price has boomed,
Mm.
uh, which means that there's more money in their coffers. Secondly, United States has suspended sanctions on Russian oil, not only
Yeah.
to began with India, but now they have suspended that for all countries. It'll be very difficult for them after 30 days to reimpose sanctions because it
Mm.
show that they're not capable of taking any.
Decisive action.
Not only that, they can't think in the long term. Uh,
Mm.
it's all ad hoc. It's all reaction to events, taking a very, very short-term point of view, but
Understood.
a very considered long-term view of how they should then therefore look at the problems on the energy front that are developing because of this conflict. So I don't know whether they'll be able to reverse. And if they did, actually, it will be a blow to the India-US relationship.
Mm.
Because they can't play with us like this that
Certainly.
impose penalty tariffs and then they get removed because the US Supreme Court intervened. Then, because of their self-interest, because they want to control the prices at the pump, gasoline prices at the pump in the United States, therefore they suspend these sanctions. And
Mm.
once that purpose is served, they reimpose sanctions. This will be a blow to their India relationship also. So
Mm.
that also aspect one should take into account. So Russia also is now uh, will see that on the Ukraine front, pressure on them has inevitably declined because Ukraine conflict has gone off the radar and the
Mm.
focus on much more serious situation that is
Mm.
developing in the
In the
Gulf.
West Asia.
To that extent, they have more equities,
Mm.
more levers in their hands
Yeah.
to promote their own interests. Now, insofar as China is concerned, uh, they also are gaining from this because United States is getting bogged down,
Mm.
and there is now more and more reconsideration of the value of you know uh, defense
Relationships countries have with
trades
the
and
US.
features they have in this region and everything else. There's going to be a longer term impact on that. The incapacity of the United States to provide security and the incapacity of the United States to deter and control Israel.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that will have an impact down the line on how other countries will see American power in this region.
Good.
Now, China, uh, in that sense, would be a gainer. Now, insofar as the flow of oil, Iranian oil to China is concerned through the Gulf of Hormuz, Strait of Hormuz, yes, they will be under pressure. But on the other hand, only 10% of their oil comes from
Mm.
the Strait of Hormuz. So therefore, they can go elsewhere to get access to
Absolutely.
oil. They'll have to
Yes.
pay more. They'll have to pay
Mm.
more. It will be a drain, but nevertheless, their financial position is so strong. I mean,
Mm.
last year, their trade surplus was over $1 trillion, so they have a lot of money to play with. When
Certainly.
America gets weakened, they have other sources they can go to buy oil. Therefore, they are
Mm.
not. And now you see that Trump, under pressure from what is happening, has had to postpone his visit to China.
Mm.
Um,
True.
so, to that extent, um, in terms of visibility and the China's position, they have the upper hand. They have the upper hand. Uh,
Mm.
so, so, so therefore, coming back to the question you
Yes, sir.
asked, that main members of BRICS, Russia and China, are in
Mm.
different ways gainers. The biggest loser is India. Australia,
Certainly.
not, I mean, sorry, the other countries,
Brazil.
other, in terms of the original founder members of BRICS, they're not, well, South Africa may be affected, but much, much less. We are the most affected, most,
So
because we
yes,
have 1 million people in the Gulf working in the Gulf. We have about 40% of our energy that comes from there, and about 40% of our remittances, about $35 billion that come from.
absolutely. UAE or the Gulf. Absolutely, sir.
And if the situation deteriorates, continues to deteriorate, and we are
Yes, sir.
facing a situation where there is a this fear and potential for mass exodus, especially from the UAE, where we are
Yes,
seeing
sir.
7 million people. How are we going to handle that? So, in fact,
Awesome.
we are the most affected, and affected by whom? Affected by
Mm.
two countries whom we see as our very close friends, and with
Absolutely.
whom we have tied up our future in many ways. That is United
So,
States of Israel.
the, the most direct involvement India has had in the current conflict has because of the IRIS Dena being found very close to our shore and being blown up by the United States of America. Do you think the fact that we knew that the submarine is there, yet refused to intervene or rescue the sailors, constitute a direct affront to India's security and growth for all in the region doctrine? Because in our saga doctrine, it is said that if there is something which is happening in the neighboring region, the Indian Navy should participate in rescue operations and so on. Yes.
Yeah, but no, I think that is stretching the argument a little bit. First of all, whether we knew of the presence of the USS, US submarine, attack submarine in the Indian Ocean, I don't know. My guess
Mm,
would be that we would not, because the SS, um, the attack submarines are very difficult to detect, because they
mm,
can stay underwater for a very long time. Uh,
mm,
and they are not armed with ballistic missiles or anything, they're armed with torpedoes.
mm.
So their presence in the waters close to us uh, possibly would not be known to us, or even if it was known to us,
Mm.
we would not immediately consider that as a threat to us, given the fact
Brilliant.
that we do so many military exercises, naval exercises with the United
But
States. With the
what I
United,
meant to say was that when the SOS call was sent, the Sri Lankan Navy would have gotten to know, so would we.
I'm
So why
coming,
did we not react then? Sorry, that's what I meant. Yeah.
I'm coming to that. That we do this exercise, the naval exercises, and very advanced naval exercises in which submarines also take part, aircraft carriers take part with the United.
Mm.
Uh,
Yes.
we are used to collaborating with each other in order to maintain stability uh,
In the region. Yeah.
in the Indian Ocean,
Mm.
deter essentially any potential disruption of the flow
Yes.
of oil and trade uh, through this space with basically China in mind. That is one.
Mm.
Secondly, I don't think that we would have imagined that the United States needed to sink an Iranian ship close to our shores.
Mm.
This is just muscle flexing and this is warmongering by the United States.
Mm.
If at all they wanted to do what they have announced, that is to decimate, destroy the Iranian naval assets, then
Mm.
it's not as if this particular ship which participated in a peaceful exercise was
Mm.
a threat to U.S. interests. What U.S. interests are there in this part of the world?
Mm.
They could have sunk this ship when it was close to the Iranian shores, or in the Sea of Oman. Then
Mm.
is the battle zone in which they could have sunk the ship. Why do it
They
here?
don't-
Completely insensitive to India's concerns and India's efforts to actually build cooperation and understanding in the Indian
Yes.
Ocean, which is the thrust of Sagar Initiative and the Mahasagar Initiative. Now, with regard to what you said about offering help, now our foreign minister has said in Parliament, and when you say that in
Mm.
Parliament, you can't sort of mislead the parliament because that's a very serious breach of privilege. He has said that they had actually agreed to all the three Iranian ships docking in Kochi,
mm,
and eventually one of them did dock. But this particular ship uh, did not take up the offer, could not take up the offer, and was sunk.
mm.
So it's not
Okay.
that we didn't do our duty by way of responding to a request for shelter in one of our ports, but before that could happen, it got sunk. So there it is.
Certainly.
I
Yeah.
don't think that we need to feel guilty because it was not in our territorial waters, it was not in our EEZ. But
Yes.
but the fact is that since this ship participated in our Milan exercise, and you know what the meaning of the word Milan is. So
Mm,
in that context, a ship that participated in our exercise and participated in the fleet review and took the salute, uh,
mm.
where our president was present, to be
Yes.
sunk like that from the human point of view,
Mm.
you know,
So,
we could have immediately publicly condoled the death of these
yes.
Iranian naval personnel,
Yes.
which for some reason we didn't do as we should have.
So now, in a recent event, Christopher Landau, who's a junior minister in the United States, commented that the US would not let India become a quote unquote another China, suggesting that the unscrupuled nature of growth of China, which was allowed by the United States, would not be permitted in India's case. How should India's trade and tech policy adapt to this partnership with a ceiling?
Well, there always has been an undercurrent of thinking in
Mm,
our policy making circles and in our public opinion that we should not over rely uh, ourselves on our relationship with the United States, and that we can't fully trust the United States given
mm.
our experience of the past and how United States has been dealing with other countries. Recently, as you know, the manner in which they have dealt with their closest allies in Europe.
Yes, certainly.
Uh, in fact, making territorial claims on
On
Europe.
Greenland. Yeah.
So therefore, any sensible policymaker would draw some conclusions from this. That
Mm,
that if America can do this, despite decades of very intensively close relationship with their allies, they can
mm,
strike a blow to them. Uh, this can happen to India too, because India doesn't have that kind of a relationship with the United States. On the other hand,
mm,
as pragmatic policymakers, you don't have to base your policy on the worst case scenario. You
mm.
have to base your policy on what you think is
It's going to happen. Yeah.
practical, what is it that you can do in terms of gaining from that relationship, and what is
Mm,
you can do in preventing damage to your
mm,
vital interests uh,
mm,
by creating some guardrails where you do not become over dependent on the United States. It's a very difficult diplomatic task. A very difficult diplomatic.
Certainly. But it's something which has to be done. Yes.
But it has to be done. Now, in that context, what Lando, the Deputy Secretary of State, said at the Raisina dialogue is something that was always at the back of the mind of the Indian policymakers and public opinion.
Certainly. Yeah.
He said it publicly that we have very good relationship. We're going to build up a relationship, this and that, but we're not going to let you become another China where you can begin to compete with us
Mm,
economically.
fair
Uh,
enough.
so
Okay.
there was no need to say this. There was no need
Mm,
to say this, especially on an Indian platform in New
yes.
Delhi.
Yes.
We confirm to those who are a little skeptical of our relationship with the United States that we should actually make sure in the
Mm,
future, keeping this in mind, that we diversify our relationship and not put all our
Certainly.
eggs or most of our
Yes.
eggs in the U.S. basket. I don't know why he said that,
Hmm.
uh, uh, because it's not as if he was ill-advised. He wanted to say
Yes.
it, he said it. Uh,
Hmm.
that is one. The other, of course, is this nonsense that they let China uh, grow. As
Hmm.
yes, China took full advantage of their mistakes, and
Yes. It's a very patriarchal view. Yeah.
those mistakes were made knowingly and consciously by
Hmm.
the United States policymakers and the U.S. corporations, because in a globalized world, they thought that they can shift production to countries
Hmm.
like China with low labor costs, use that as a
Yes.
base, and export back to United States and to the rest of the world. And
Hmm.
for the U.S. corporations, improve their bottom lines and shareholder value, so everybody gains. Now, they didn't take into account that China would, in course of time, develop
Hmm.
independent capacities through heavy investment in R&D, plus other methods they use to get
Hmm.
access to United States technology, including
Yes.
including sending uh, thousands of people, hundreds and thousands of people to the
Hmm.
United States to learn from the
Yes.
United States. The Chinese are very
Hmm.
open about it, unlike
Yes. Even
Indians.
Xi Jinping went because of that reason there.
Indians think we know everything. So, but the Chinese are willing to learn from us.
Hmm.
So, in very specific areas where they wanted access to technology or whatever else, they did that, and those people came back and built Chinese programs. So, whatever it
Yes.
is. So, to give the impression as if uh, the Americans sort of uh, went into this. Uh, how should I say? Uh,
उनने कोई मेहरबानी की that to let China be China.
no, no, in the sense that it was done without thought, and
Hmm.
it was an altruistic sort of a thing they did, that let's
Hmm.
help China grow. No,
Hmm.
the thing I want to mention, which you should keep
Yes,
in,
sir.
we opened up in 1991,
Yes, sir.
uh, and then progressively we have opened up.
Hmm.
Uh, and everybody says, or the Americans say, that we are two democracies, the world oldest
Hmm.
democracy, the world largest democracy, and we share values and everything else. But
Hmm.
in the period, especially from let's say 2004, 5 onwards, when China began to rise very sharply, why did United States, until a few years ago, continue to mollycoddle China, invest in China,
Hmm.
build up China's capacities,
Hmm.
even when China was not a democracy? Not only when China was not a democracy, it was more than an authoritarian regime.
Hmm.
It was a real totalitarian regime in many senses, and
Certainly.
where the Xi Jinping uh,
Hmm.
publicly said that we have no time for your values and for democracy and
Hmm.
everything. So why did they choose a
Hmm.
communist government, a communist
Yes.
government to build up, and neglected a democracy when there was a choice?
Yes.
So
Hmm.
therefore, for them to sort of try to uh, take the line
Yes.
that they sort of misjudged China and this and that. No, it's
Yes.
and let China grow. No,
Yes.
they were culpable themselves because they opted for
Absolutely.
the solution, opted
Yes.
for that policy and
So,
neglected India. And today they say, oh, we don't want to build you up
the
like.
way we did China. So Dakshesh had a question, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, India expressed deep concern over the US and Israeli strikes on Iran starting late February 2026, urging restraint to protect energy flows. So, given India's Ministry of External Affairs statement in February calling for restraint after the initial strikes, how can India diplomatically engage Tehran without alienating Jerusalem?
Well, we have very close ties with Israel, and they have developed over the years. That is a fact. Israel has been very helpful to us at times of need, and therefore we value that relationship. Iran is a neighbor. We have equities there too. Uh, at one time, Iran was the second largest supplier of oil to India, but because of US sanctions, we had to stop buying oil from Iran. We still have trade with Iran in items that are not covered by the sanctions, especially food and medicine and stuff like that. We then have other connectivity projects in Iran, which are very important to us strategically in terms of the Chabahar port and access to Afghanistan, and the international North-South trade corridor, which will which gives us direct access through Iran to southern part of Russia.
Yes.
Plus, we have other important things to look at when we deal with Iran. First of all, we don't want to get into this Shia Sunni business.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so, so we have, and also we have to keep in mind that there is a large Shia population in India too, uh, and therefore stable ties with Iran are important in this larger sectarian conflict
Yes.
that divides the Islamic world. So, and the fact that we invited Iran to participate in our Milan exercise, uh,
Mm.
along with so many other countries, shows that uh, we want to keep our lines of communication with Iran open. As you know, when I was Foreign Secretary, we invited for the first time the then uh, Iranian President Khatami as the chief guest at our Republic Day. Uh,
Mm.
Frequently, other Iranian presidents have come to India as our guest, and Prime Minister himself, Modi, has gone to Iran. Our Defense Minister has gone there. Our Foreign Minister has gone there. So we kept channels of communication open. Now, at the same time, our relationship with the Gulf countries has expanded enormously,
Mm.
enormously. And
Yeah.
our stakes in the Gulf countries are much greater than our stakes either in Iran or in Israel. After
Mm.
all, as I just mentioned about the size of our expatriate population and energy flows and remittances and all that, there's nothing like that vis-a-vis vis-a-vis Israel or vis-a-vis Iran. And now we have this situation where Israel, Iran, and the Gulf countries are locked in this
Mm.
conflict. And we have varying degrees, but very important equities with all
Mm.
three. So that presents an enormous challenge to our
Mm.
diplomacy. How do we balance this? If we are seen as pro, too pro-Israel, then it affects our relationship with Iran. If we are seen as now wanting to become closer to Iran,
Mm.
and we have a big problem with the Gulf countries, which are now being attacked militarily by
Mm.
Iran. On
So it's a
top,
very delicate position we have to be in. Mm.
yeah, on top of that, we are the chair of the BRICS this year. And
Mm.
Iran
And
and
Iran is part of BRICS.
Iran is there, UAE is there, and Saudi Arabia is there. So how do we then ensure that we can discharge
Mm.
our responsibilities as chair in a manner which is equitable and objective and which meets the interests of all sides, when the interests of the all sides are diametrically opposed.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. Yes.
Therefore,
Shit.
it's a huge challenge for us. And
For us.
my argument is that whether this was intended or not intended, the 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 country that has done the biggest
Mm.
damage to our interests in this region is Israel.
Mm.
By attacking Iran and then
Mm.
Iran attacking the Gulf countries.
So,
Uh,
but for
who is
Israel to have attacked Iran, it is impossible for Mr. Modi to not have known, or Mr. Modi's permission to not have sought, because unfortunately the timing was such that he was there less than 48 hours before the first strikes.
no. This is more complex than that.
Okay.
Because it was the turn of Netanyahu to visit India. But Netanyahu pleaded that he could not come to India because of security reasons, because he has
Mm.
to overfly that part of the world where, where he's persona non grata. And he's been declared the war criminal
Enemy.
by the International
Yeah.
Court. So he cited security reasons and genuine from his point of view to explain why he couldn't come to India and kept pressing us
Mm.
to go there. Now, the question was the timing.
Mm.
So I suppose one argument would have been that when it comes to Israel, which is locked in a constant war,
Hmm.
not only with Iran, of course, but even with the Palestinians, that there is never a right time to go to Israel. Uh,
Hmm.
Therefore, maybe it was felt that let's take the plunge and get over with it.
Get over it. Huh?
Insofar as what you mentioned, which is on the minds of many, that 2 days after Israel and United States attacked Iran, so was it? Didn't we take that into consideration? Now, the argument can be given. Now, I don't know the inside story, which is that there was a feeling that United States may not take this plunge because the consequences would be very grave, as we are seeing now. He doesn't know
Yes.
what's coming out, and that this was intimidatory tactics.
Hmm.
Wanted to put pressure on Iran that I have massed this armada, and if you don't yield, I will take action. And that
Hmm.
therefore, the United States may not, and Israel may not attack uh,
Certainly.
Iran the way they did eventually.
Hmm.
And therefore, the timing of the visit became a little problematic from that
I
point of view.
think Dakshesh has a question.
Yeah, so what do you see as the most viable diplomatic channels for India to urge de-escalation between the US, Israel, and uh, Iran without compromising its strategic partnerships with the both of the countries?
Well, I think we have to, as chair of the BRICS, mobilize member countries. And I have in mind uh, Russia, China, Brazil, South Africa, Egypt, these five countries to come together and forge some kind of a common position, and on that basis, put pressure on the warring sides to de-escalate. India alone doesn't have the heft, doesn't have the weight to uh, take this responsibility on its own, because how do you square the circle? How do you
Mm.
square the circle? Uh, yes, we can make a general appeal as we have done, that dialogue and diplomacy and stuff like that. We already said that. Uh, and we can reiterate that, but that's all right in terms of making a statement, but it doesn't have that kind of a weight. But if, let's say, you were able to forge a common position between the countries that I mentioned, and then made an appeal to all parties, uh,
Hmm.
Mm.
that could have some influence. The
Yeah,
other is that uh, statements are fine, but what are the points of pressure you can mobilize to uh, stop escalation?
yeah,
Now, it's a very, very difficult task. Now, I think United States may want a way out because it's not working according to plan, and there are signals that Trump may want to uh, have an off ramp, as they say. This is a new balance. uh, but Israel is absolutely determined, as I
Mm.
Hmm.
understand, not to let go. And they are upping the ante. Now they've killed Larijani. They want to decapitate the entire leadership, and they went ahead and attacked the South Pars gas field, uh,
Hmm.
which has invited massive Iranian counterattacks on the Qatar gas field and on other sites uh, in uh, in the Gulf countries,
Hmm.
uh, which is very dangerous for the world economy, because the oil prices will continue to shoot up. Very dangerous. Now, the
yeah,
Gulf countries would want somebody to protect them. Now,
Yeah.
their
yeah.
dilemma is that should they join hands with the United States and Israel and start attacking
Hmm.
Iran? That will be seen very negatively by the
Hmm.
Islamic Muslim public opinion globally, that you're
Yes.
joining hands with Israel to attack another Muslim country. Uh,
Hmm.
but at the same time, they can't remain defenseless and not do anything. So they are in a
Hmm.
dilemma.
Yeah.
True.
Unfortunately, there's no easy solution. There's
Yeah.
no easy solution in the United Nations. The matter has gone to the UN Security Council. Bahrain got a resolution passed, which is totally one-sided. In fact, Russia tried to dissuade the Arab countries not to
Mm,
vote for a resolution like that. That was playing the American game. But
mm,
they went ahead nevertheless because they are under great pressure by the United States. So the UN Security Council is helpless. Uh,
mm,
so all said and done, all one can say is that it's not as if every problem has a solution, or
mm,
in
So,
particular that every problem has a short-term solution. At the end of the day, at the end of the day, this war cannot continue forever.
mm,
There's no
yeah.
way. It has to stop. But at what
mm.
stage it will stop, and in the process,
That's
much damage will be done
mm,
to this region and to the global
what a
community as a whole.
Yeah.
Difficult. It's difficult to say. If it becomes a war to the finish,
mm,
I'm afraid all hell will break loose. Very, very
mm.
unfortunate. Very unfortunate what's happening.
So
Yeah.
keeping that in mind, um, considering our relationship with a lot of the Gulf countries, with the Strait of Hormuz at risk from Iranian retaliation as of March 2026, what specific measures should India take to secure its imports and exports from the Gulf region?
Well, we are in touch with Iran, and as you know, Iran has given us uh, has acceded to our request to let our ships uh, go through the Strait of Hormuz. Uh, I Our foreign minister has said publicly that it is on a ship by ship basis, and there's no blanket approval that uh, any ship carrying oil from the Gulf can traverse the strait without any obstruction by Iran. But what Iranians seem to be saying is that these ships should actually traverse the strait as close as possible to the Iranian shore, so that they want to make sure that they can verify that these ships are headed towards India, or whatever their consideration is. And they would want something in return, uh,
Yeah.
as is always the case. What would that be? I can't say, but they will want more support from us for their position, especially as BRIC chairman, and
Mm,
how we can do that. I personally feel that we should find a way to do that because our interests are very deeply involved. But on the other hand, what should be the degree of support we extend, because we don't want to annoy the
mm,
Gulf countries either. The second problem is, you talked about import export, is that because of the attack on the on Qatar's gas or LPG facility, LNG uh, facility, Qatar has declared force majeure, and for the time being, all contracts have been suspended. So
Mm.
no LNG is coming from Qatar to India, and
Yeah.
Qatar is the largest supplier of gas to India.
mm,
So it's a huge issue. And then we get a lot of gas from this region for fertilizer plants, for making
mm.
urea, very vital for our agriculture. So we'll have
Yes.
to go elsewhere and pay higher prices, but it's a
Mm.
cost on us.
But still have to incur.
Iraq is the largest exporter of oil to India today,
Mm,
and all Iraqi oil goes through the Strait of Hormuz.
mhm,
So we have to then make sure that uh, we have this permission from Iran that they will not interfere with this flow. And as I said, it will all depend on what kind of a bargain we can reach. Iran would also like to keep us on their right side because at the moment they are in a perilous situation. They need also
Yes.
friends.
Oh,
And,
even slight allies, yes, for
they
sure,
will
sir.
value whatever support India can give.
I
Yeah.
think the shape of the question.
Yeah. So keeping in mind economic stability through this year, how do you think India should prioritize diversifying its Gulf oil imports?
I don't think there's a problem in getting oil from elsewhere
Hmm.
because we've already diversified. our oil resources. If you look at the number of countries from which we import oil, it's very numerous, very
Yeah.
numerous. Uh, right from Guyana to Nigeria to Namibia of course, the Gulf countries and Indonesia. So a lot of countries that we buy oil from. Of course, the major suppliers are in the Gulf and Russia. Now,
Mm.
we're buying more oil from Russia already. More contracts have been signed for Russian oil, although the price is very high, almost $100.
Yeah.
Uh, so we can get oil. Problem would be with gas
Hmm.
because the gas market is not as well developed as the oil market. You know, at any time, there are God knows how many ships on sea, tankers on sea, where oil is available and you can buy it at spot prices. But this is not the case with gas. There
Hmm.
there isn't that kind of an integrated global market. So gas
Understood.
will be a problem, but then there are other countries that can supply gas to us. Australia is a big source. The United States can also sell. Um, so it's not, but that will be a little more difficult. So I don't think that the availability is so much a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the
Hmm.
price that is a problem. And I
Yeah.
was reading the latest views on this by the economic advisor to government of India, and
Ji, Sanya.
and he said that if it is short term, even if the prices are high, it we can absorb the shock. Uh,
Certainly.
it will be the
Mm.
problem of how long this endures. If it is 6 months, then it's a problem. But
Mm.
Hmm.
if it is less than that, then it's not going to materially affect our economy.
For
Hmm.
sure. So, what do you think about India's personal diplomacy? So, we had Dr. Sanjay Baru on the show as well, who has been a media advisor to Prime Minister Manmohan Singh and is a known global strategist. So, what he had said was that it shows India's weakness that despite having so much interest in the Strait of Hormuz and the West Asia in general, Israel was able to attack Iran because India naturally, logically, would not want a conflict to happen. So India is directly getting impacted, A, and B, India failed to stop Iran and Israel into going into a conflict in the first place, despite Prime Minister Modi having such great apparent relations with Prime Minister Netanyahu. Yes.
I think this is a political position. I don't think
Mhm.
it's a position
Yeah.
of
To be clear, I don't espouse it. I'm just voicing his opinion. Yeah.
of, of an impartial analyst.
Hmm.
Uh, Israel has been targeting Iran for a very, very long time.
Hmm.
It's not even the 12-day war that I have in mind, but if you go back, Israel has been pushing for United States to
Hmm.
attack Iran. Uh, for that, they've always projected uh, the Iranian threat as existential for Israel. You would recall the kind of speeches Netanyahu has been making in the UN, where with charts and all, he's been explaining some years ago how Iran was going to be able to develop a nuclear weapon in 1 month or in 2 months or in 15 days or God knows what.
He's been saying that for 20 years as well.
And years have passed, and even now the IAEA has said there is no evidence that Iran is working on a nuclear weapon program, though they say there are suspicious activities. But that's besides the point, the suspicious activities. So now for anybody to say that India could sufficiently influence Israel not to look at its problems with Iran as existential, not to eliminate their nuclear scientists and their leaders and this and that, uh, or demonize Israel or mobilize the American Jewish lobby to back their demand for United States to take action, military action against Iran, in which they eventually succeeded. To say that India could influence that, I think, is a bit of a stretch.
Right.
That is
Hmm.
one part. Uh, Similarly, on the Strait of Hormuz, uh, look, United States itself is currently helpless.
Hmm.
It, uh, in fact, Trump says that he didn't think that they would close it, and
Hmm.
now he wants the help of everybody, uh,
Hmm.
Europe and NATO and everybody else, to try
Helpful.
and open the Strait of Hormuz.
Hmm.
So the fact that if Israel attacked Iran, then the Strait of Hormuz at some stage was bound to be either closed
Hmm.
or traffic through it would be disrupted was on the cards. And
Hmm.
India was in no position to simply to say to Israel or United States or anybody else that
Hmm.
please our interests will be jeopardized if the Strait of Hormuz is closed, and therefore reign in Israel, don't attack
Right.
Iran, and this and that.
Yeah, that's
But look at
of.
Europe. Look at Europe. Their interests
Hmm.
are very gravely affected by the closing of the Strait of Hormuz. Uh,
Hmm.
but
Okay.
they are helpless. So the argument that India for India is a sign of weakness, I think
Hmm.
the rest of the world is exhibiting the same sign of weakness. They
Yes.
could control this has happened. This has
Yeah.
happened.
I,
I
I think
don't
Dakshesh.
buy, I don't buy that argument. It is that
Absolutely.
we are victims, but we are victims because uh, of the follies of others, and those follies we could not prevent,
Hmm.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
Certainly.
So looking ahead, how do you think India should kind of recalibrate its no first use policy, messaging in light of Iran's asymmetric nuclear threats during the war?
No, there is no nuclear threat by Iran. Where is that?
No, in a sense, Iran is constantly in fear of nuclear attack. The opposite way. Because
Yes.
Iran doesn't have nuclear weapons, that's why Ayatollah Khomeini could be killed, is what his point is.
Yes.
Yes, but well, Ayatollah Khamenei said that developing nuclear weapons is contrary to Islamic tenets. It's haram and this and that, and therefore, while they had their nuclear program uh, under supervision of the IAEA and limited to what Iran was permitted under the NPT, um, the Iranian nuclear program was not something which would be a point of worry, uh, should have been a point of worry to the extent of launching a military attack on Iran. Now, but let me put it somewhat differently. So far as we are concerned, why should they, even if Iran was to develop nuclear weapons, why should that concern us? I mean, we have Pakistan, which has nuclear weapons and which is our enemy, and we've had to deal with that. And which are the countries that make Pakistan nuclear? It's China
Hmm.
and the United States. So when you have a um, uh, country next door like Pakistan, which is hostile to you, which is a nuclear weapon state, and where the favorite field marshal of President Trump can on the U.S. soil say that uh, if that Pakistan can destroy half the world if needs be, if
Hmm.
an eventuality arises. And at that time, I had put on a post on X to say that I'm surprised that he's not been wrapped on the knuckles by the United States of America by launching a nuclear threat, not only to India, but half the world from American soil. And they said nothing.
I mean, the one thing Operation Sindoor has surely done is make Asim Munir a war hero in Pakistan. I mean, the concentration of power he's had after Operation Sindoor has been unprecedented.
True. But coming back to the question you asked, now Lavrov has said publicly, which is disquieting because, as you know, when there were 5+1 talks with Iran and the
Mm.
nuclear deal was struck in 2015 under Obama's presidency,
Mm.
Russia was very, very much uh, a close associate with the other countries to
Hmm.
prevent Iran from going nuclear. Uh,
Certainly.
the Russians uh, are great votaries of the preservation of the NPT. They don't want
Hmm.
another nuclear power
Uh,
emerge. Now, Lavrov,
Certainly.
but he said a couple of days ago that unfortunately, the consequence of what the Americans and Israelis have done to Iran
Hmm.
would be to actually uh, push Iran into becoming a nuclear weapon state.
mm,
In
Uh,
other words, and I was surprised at that statement that
hmm.
he is now visualizing the possibility that
Of it
in
becoming a nuclear.
order to protect itself in the future from this
Hmm.
of aggression against it, that like
Hmm.
North Korea, it will need to develop a nuclear weapon
Nuclear. So,
capacity. So, the, I mean, for Lavrov to say this publicly is now half accepting the logic of why Iran would be now pushed into
would
becoming.
would be attacked in the first place. Absolutely. So unless Dakshesh has another question, we just have one last question and then we'll wrap up. Dakshesh, do you have any question?
just had one small question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, what measures do you think can protect India's annual Gulf remittances from the 8.5 to 10 million workers who are currently placed there if the US-Iran tensions kind of prompt mass evacuations or job losses?
I think this is a nightmare scenario that is troubling the minds of the Indian policymakers, uh, which is why they are extremely worried at the Iranian attacks on the Gulf countries. Uh,
Mm,
very worried that if the Gulf countries are then pushed by United States to join it in retaliating against Iran, and then it becomes a kind of a spiral where they keep attacking each other, and ultimately, even now, the Iranians have announced five or six oil production sites which they're going to refineries which they're going to target. But tomorrow, if they start attacking the cities and buildings and offices, uh, it may be of Western companies,
mm,
targeting them as they may, well, as they may. And already one or two they have done, like the Amazon Web, whatever it
Mm.
was. That
yeah.
Yes.
may destroy the economic interests of the United States in the Gulf, which means attacking essentially the civilian infrastructure
Mm,
or offices and this and that.
Mm.
Then I think there will be a danger of Indians working in Dubai or in Abu Dhabi or in other countries wanting to be evacuated. And how do you
mm,
evacuate? I mean, even if I mean we are altogether about 10 million, but how do you evacuate even 1 million? The
mm,
3.7 in UAE itself is a nightmare scenario.
yeah.
Mm. Certainly.
Therefore, all you can do is whatever
Oh,
behind the scenes, put pressure on all the countries involved not to allow the situation to degrade to the point that that eventuality it becomes a reality. It's a very, very difficult situation for
Mm,
India.
mm.
And we cannot do it. We
mm,
cannot do it. Physically, we cannot do it. And then
So,
the
so
economy of Kerala is so much dependent on
these remittances, absolutely.
all.
Uh,
There are
what
very,
did,
and it can
yes.
disrupt our society here if there are shortages.
Certainly, certainly, sir. The last question we have is a slightly personal one. Your brother, Mr. Kapil Sibal,
Mm,
is someone who's known to have almost diametrically opposite views,
mm,
even vis-a-vis foreign policy,
mm,
among other things with you.
mm.
How is it like having an immediate family member so publicly having such diverse views as opposed to you? And how is it like on the dinner table? Do you often get into arguments about foreign policy or something like that?
No, because you know he is a politician in that sense. He's been minister in the UPA government for 10 years or whatever.
Mm.
Uh, he's fought elections. He's a member of the Lok Sabha and a
Oh,
member
it's fine.
of Rajya Sabha.
Mm.
So he has a political career. and that political career has been built in opposition to the BJP or the NDA.
Mm,
So I'm not a politician. My background is that of a civil servant or a foreign service officer. I don't get into domestic politics and
mm,
point scoring that we see is happening between the two sides.
mm,
I look at, from my perspective, rightly or wrongly, what is in our larger national interest beyond
mm.
party political interest.
Understood.
And in all my years, almost 40 years, I have always defended India.
Mm,
That is the job of a foreign service officer, that you
mm,
defend India and you counter all the criticism that is directed against India. And we've been subject to that criticism all along my diplomatic career.
mm.
Even now, the kind of press
Okay.
we get in the West and the attacks that we get, not only in the press, for academic circles and
Mm,
civil society and think tanks, whereas the governments are ostensibly positive, but not always. The United States has these reports,
absolutely.
annual human rights report, religious freedom reports, which target us. But other governments are a little more discreet, but their media and think tanks and academic circles, civil society are very critical
Harsh.
of
Yes.
India, and therefore we I have always had to defend. So
Uh,
therefore, my 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 starting point is very different from the starting point of my brother who is in politics.
mm.
And since we know what it is, the thing is to enjoy good food at the table rather than getting into political.
Discussion. Absolutely. That's a very good take, sir. On that note, thank you so very much, Ambassador Sibal, for joining us and presenting us with your analysis. It's been a pleasure having you on the Union again. Yeah.
My